My name is Karen Sims, and I am the director of the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. And we are so happy to have you here today. I have a couple of local guests. I know we've done a lot of featuring of different programs and services and opportunities, but there were some things that are happening within the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative, including new people who are with us, that I thought we would sort of take a step and really talk about what TRI has going on and introduce you to Richelle Brown, who is our new assistant director, and Janice Walker will be joining the conversation along with Leanne Kelly, our board president, to talk about our transforming community effort. So welcome, welcome. I am going to start to share this in just 1 second. I just want to remind you that the views and the opinions of our guests are their own, and we are actually able to do this work thanks to the generous donations and grants from the Champaign County Mental Health Board and the City of Champaign and other local donors. So without further ado, I just want to say, and I hopefully this whole conversation will make sense and will like tie in conversations we've had last week about the racial justice task force from the coalition and H3. So we're hoping you can connect all the threads and to see where TRI fits in with this larger community transformation initiative. But without further ado, I am so excited to introduce you to Richelle Brown. I'm sorry, Rachel. Say that I wanted to make sure that you knew I could be really messy and too. So I wanted to introduce you to Richelle Brown, who is our new assistant director. We are so happy to have her. So Richelle, introduce yourself and maybe tell people a little bit about where you're from and how you got here. And I'll keep probing.
Okay, because it's a bit of a journey to get to Champaign is what it was. Thank you so much for having me. And a bit of a journey. I'm pretty new to Champaign. I came here in June of 2020. I came here from Fairfax, Virginia, which is about 30 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. Was there for about 10 years. My background is in education, but I was teaching back in the 90s. And then I moved over into providing service programming. And that's basically what I was doing in Fairfax for the past 10 years. I started by doing home-based counseling, and then I started a family resource center in elementary school. So I worked for the school system. And the purpose of that job is to provide programming for parents that will help the students. But in addition, it's connecting parents to resources. This should sound familiar. Connecting people to things in the community that will help them. Communicating with school administration so they know what the parents believe might be missing or what the teachers think might be missing. So it's kind of connecting all the dots within a school and community setting. And I absolutely loved that job. But within that work, and meanwhile, I should say my husband's he's a teacher. He is a teacher. And within both of our work, we would very consistently meet people who were experiencing homelessness or they were on the verge of becoming homeless. And so we decided we decided earlier, but eventually in 2015, we actually started a nonprofit to address homelessness in the Fairfax County area. So that's still running in it's a very small nonprofit, but we do what we can. So and then I came here. And so that's I didn't really finish the loop. So then we decided it was time for a change. I mean, it's just it was, if you know the Fairfax, DC area, it's congested, it's a lot, and it was time. And so we found ourselves in Champaign and we are loving it.
Wonderful. So that I love the drive-by Reader's Digest version. And so you see, Richelle has well-traveled, been across the East Coast. She's also lived in Panama for a while, which I think is absolutely fascinating, really committed. And although she kind of gave you the Reader's Digest version of her not-for-profit, A Place to Stand, she really saw it as a transformation effort designed to sort of elevate families and communities. It was collaborative, it was capacity building. And what was really like meaningful to me is that it wasn't like ever grant hugely funded. It was done through the kindness and generosity of volunteers and donors, and her and her husband's sweat equity and love for people and communities. And when I like heard the narrative and story, I thought, what a gift she will be to our local community and how invaluable that is. And so just so that people can get a feel for the kind of work, because you're like, we did collaboration and you did a lot more than that. So can you share some examples of the kind of work that you did?
So do you mean through A Place to Stand specifically?
We can, yeah, yeah.
So the idea, first, I guess it's important to know the vision of A Place to Stand. We decided to address family homelessness specifically, partly because we work in the schools, and through the children, you kind of figure out what's happening with families, but also it was about breaking the cycle, right? We wanted to make sure we were addressing family issues, and then that each family member was getting the service that they need, and in hopes of getting them into, elevate to the next step, right? So ideally, we would have created a community within. We want people to stay where their network is, right? We don't want to take people out of where they are or where they have, where they're experiencing, like where they have assistance, and then take them someplace new where they don't have any safety net, nothing, right? So the idea was to help people find employment, help people connect to the resources, whether it's food, job training. We worked with other nonprofits who provided these services. We actually connected with there's another nonprofit called Homestretch that's just incredible, and they were missing the piece that we also wanted to provide, which was healthcare services. So we connected with Homestretch and we started a clinic. So then we were providing free healthcare services to families without insurance, or just to families with people who just needed emergency care on a Saturday. So it was really, I think what was different and what we tried to do was we were constantly assessing people's needs and just trying to fill those gaps, not just saying, well, this is us and this is what we do and this is all we do. And yet we weren't going to try and reinvent the wheel. Like, we knew there are people out there doing great work, so we're not going to try to do that. We're going to find those people, meet with them, and then work together. So actually we've ended up right now in partnership. When COVID hit and the schools suddenly shut down, the school food programs were scrambling and figuring out how are we going to feed students. Well, A Place to Stand went in. I think we shut down on a Thursday. We were able to get access to schools on a Friday morning. My volunteers and I went in and cleared out all of our pantries. And then I called up a local church, and we were able to, first we just had our stuff in a truck, but eventually we were able to store our items in a church. And we created an entire, we got a core of maybe 60 or more people to then start delivering food to families. And we did that for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. Yeah. So basically it's like meeting the need, figuring out. And so now we are the supplemental food program for Fairfax City schools. And that came out of, we weren't that before COVID, but now, well, during, as COVID continues, but schools are open, we still do that work. So it's kind of building these partnerships where we see that we are needed, to give you an idea.
Yes. So wonderful. Sorry, multitasking. I apologize. I am going to ask a question and then head back. It's not like I am not like deeply moved, but I want to just say, it sounds like, I mean, of course, I'm hoping people out in our audience are hearing how essential like building collaborative capacity, working to make sure that we're thinking holistically, meeting needs is aligned with what you've heard people say on this show about what is needed, but also what we hope people will see represented and exhibited about TRI. I know a lot of times people like think of TRI as just sort of the training piece, but when we think about trauma-informed community building, it is exactly that, working collaboratively, building capacity, making sure that communities look and feel different at the end of their journey, right? And that people are different and that people are equipped and whole, and it only happens when there's sort of this village working together. Can I ask a question? So you're newer into town, you came here during COVID. What have you noticed or become aware of, or what are you excited about sort of taking on and challenging here in Champaign-Urbana?
Well, admittedly, since I came during COVID, it was a quick move without having seen a lot. We came, we said, there's university here. We like that. Let's, and we found a place and we moved in. And I really was not aware of the whole landscape of Champaign-Urbana. And so I have learned so much about and I'm still learning a great deal about the needs of the communities and just where everything is, first of all. I'm just finally getting out and learning about what is happening, what is needed. And as I'm getting out there finally and talking to people, I'm hearing about, I mean, it actually, different place, but the needs are the same, right? Everywhere. So I just came from areas of Fairfax where, depending on where you live, you may not realize. And I think that's a very big thing to me is sometimes people, we're in our bubble. Sometimes people don't realize what's happening in the community. It's your community, in the community around them. They just think, well, I'm okay, my neighbor's okay. And then you don't realize that blocks away, so many people are not okay. And there's violence and there's hunger and there's so much going on. And that's the same thing I got here. And it was that same feeling that I had in Fairfax, where I arrived there and didn't know, then I learned and got involved and realized, there are things to be done and that everyone needs to be helping to better the entire community. And so I think both with the work that we're doing, what attracted me to TRI, it's the idea that it's not happening it's not one little thing. It's as we educate people around us. That's why the training piece is so important, right? Because I just feel like as people become more educated about what's happening and about their own community, hopefully it moves them to make changes and respond differently and do something, right? So whether it's about hunger and homelessness, or it's about community violence, it's about trauma-informed responses, I think that's all very important. So I feel like that's what I'm loving what I'm learning about the community, really. It's a slow learn here. It's a lot. It's a lot. Every time I talk to someone, I'm like, I didn't know that either. It is a lot, but yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to know more.
So you can, hopefully everybody can hear, I'm super excited to work with you, just because so much of what you articulate and voice is so aligned with mission, vision, and purpose, and also skill set. I am smart enough to know when I have skill deficits and talent deficits. And so Richelle will be such an asset to helping with our capacity building, helping with our cross-system coordination. Also, she'll be the person in our organization working around supporting individuals and staff. She'll be doing that. So you will see her both in both capacities, some macro stuff and some organizational stuff, but also she'll be doing a lot of our direct support. So if you ever kind of wanted to know that, that Richelle is here, we are partners in crime. And although I'll still be doing most of the training stuff, Richelle will definitely be kind of involved with our programming and organizational piece. So with that being said, I want to sort of shift gears because one of the things Richelle kind of started with us and got fully immersed in the ending of our Healing Communities grant, but at the start of where we're moving to sort of deepen our community's capacity to sort of address community violence in much more structural and meaningful ways, but also our kind of trauma-informed community building efforts. So what has that been like for you? And I know we've got Janice Walker, who will be joining us in a second to help us kind of broaden this conversation. So what's it been like to sort of come in, and maybe you want to describe one of the first big projects that you took on immersively, which was the PCs for People activity. Do you want to talk about what it's been like for you and some of the projects you've sort of taken on?
Sure. I do hope Janice comes on because I'm going to talk about her without her here because it's been such a joy. She's been so helpful to me. So, yeah, so I first met the people involved in Healing Communities like this, right? Virtually, which is very different than getting a chance to meet people in person. And so PCs for People was my first opportunity we were partnering with, it's the university and PCs for People to distribute laptops and hotspots to people in the community who registered for them, who qualified for them. And it was such a great experience. It really was. And we had volunteers from our organization there. We did, leading up to it, it was a lot of reaching out, phone calls, texts, getting people the information they need, trying to help them get registered, trying our best to make sure that people get what they need. And I had such an enjoyable, very long 2 days at the terminal, spending time with Janice and Diana and Tiger. It's like I met people from in person, face to face, and got to spend time getting to know them. And everyone just has such a big heart, I was just I just felt like very welcoming to everyone, whether they were registered or not registered, welcoming people in, telling them, if you're not registered, what they can do. It was just a very good feeling. Part of it was a nice feeling to get out there again, because it has been such a long COVID, so just for me, just being able to meet people in the community was wonderful. And the fact that we were able to distribute, it was a total of 150 computers and hotspots over a course of 2 days, along with the Housing Authority, was very impressive. And it was a good feeling. So that was my first project. And then, as part of all of this, we've been meeting with the Healing Communities group, who are working on this Spread Love, Not COVID campaign. So we've been talking over periods of time about what that might look like and what we want to do with that. And I think that between those conversations and then having the opportunity to get out into some of the communities, the reaction has been quite interesting to me. People want us there, like they want to learn. And here it is, it's, this COVID is over, which we know it's not, period of time, where I think, first of all, everyone working with us decided, no, I think it's still very pertinent information, right? That people still want to know, people are still feeling a little bit confused. And so we have an opportunity to speak to a small group, maybe likely seniors specifically about COVID, and maybe dispel some myths that there's still maybe things that they're unsure of, because there's a lot of news and a lot of information that's confusing. So we figured that the best thing to do was to some bring in some trusted voices and answer some questions. And this is the kind of thing that I think is invaluable. So I love being a part of it.
So I know. So I'm gonna maybe, right, like, first of all, PCs for People was a phenomenal experience. It was great. It was sort of seeing right down your wheelhouse around cross-system collaboration. And I think from my experience, and I heard you and Jana share a little bit about this, that it was like when you work collaboratively, you get a chance to sort of cross-pollinate your ideas around like what might be different, how you might respond to people differently. I know we apologize for anybody who wasn't able to take advantage of the opportunity, but I know we were really committed to wanting to provide like a lot of information and to make it a really personal experience, and to try to do it differently, because a lot of times, when opportunities become available, not saying that it was that way, that sometimes there's not the thought around what will be the user experience of the experience. And so it was nice to sort of partner, create a community that was welcoming and friendly and responsive. And we hope to sort of be involved in those kinds of efforts moving forward. And then you mentioned our Spread Love Not COVID campaign. So I want to start off with like where I think it was birthed. So we had two of our kind of community navigators, and here for you folks, Angela Worthy and Eddie Pratt, who had some ideas around sort of how do we think about getting back into the community, doing some more community programming. We realize that people are still stressed, so we want to offer like groups and workshops, and we wanted to sort of introduce them. And so I'm going to have you talk about some of your community meetings. But the other place, and so I want to talk about the event that will be coming up on April 14th, that really kind of got birthed and concretized, came from one of our wisdom leaders. And so we had a wisdom leader who, when we were talking about some of more of the community events that will happen in apartment communities, Diana reminded us, one, that she was still encountering a number of seniors who were unvaccinated, and that they still had a lot of fears that they were not leaving their homes, and that she was also encountering a lot of young adults who had a lot of confusion. And so we were initially thinking about something that was more of a wellness campaign, and we said, maybe we need to address some of the legitimate, real, ongoing concerns that we were hearing. And I have loved the opportunity to work with our Healing Communities Project, where we've had people from community listening, hearing, providing feedback to us around what people want and need, creating this really co-created experience, right? So it's wonderful. And so on April 14th, we want people to know we'll have a sign-up thing, but they can call or text 217-931-9989. And there's going to be a sign-up link, and we'll have information out to register for a community conversation about COVID. So we'll have medical people and community people, and we'll also do some recognition of our Healing Communities team, yay, at that event. And as Richelle was saying, space will be limited. I'm sure I missed something. What did I miss?
I think you got it all.
Oh,
I think you did.
Okay.
And it's in the evening. It will be from 6 to 8 p.m. Did we say that? I don't know.
I don't know if I said that. So
6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll get information out there so people can start registering.
Absolutely. And it'll be included. So when the show airs, it'll be included. So information around how to find us will be there. So, but we want, and although we are prioritizing, folks who are in our wisdom leader sort of demographic, it really will be open to anybody. We're not going to be biased, but we wanted to make sure that folks who were most connected to the need had access to being there. So we really hope people will be responsive. I didn't add, I'm just remembering my notes, that there will be an in-person option and a
Right. Virtual
and,
option.
and a
Right.
virtual option, right?
Right.
Okay. So that is our Spread Love, Not COVID. What am I missing, Richelle?
That is it. I think you mentioned, that I also went to, can I talk about my other community visit?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
sure.
Yes, I definitely want you to talk about the other things that people should look for that'll be happening in the community.
Um, I went over to Country Brook, and there are some new people in management over there, and they were also, I mean, the level of excitement I think was just, I don't know, it was just surprising. I'm like, you're so excited to see me, so they were so excited about what we had to offer, which was wonderful. And in following up with them, their interest was very similar, that apparently after we had our conversation, their management talked to some of the residents, and they were also feeling confused about COVID, and were also very interested in having a small conversation about the same topic. What we're thinking about, though, is following up with what, this is before my time, but I believe it was in December that you all went over there, and there's an interest in having groups. And so we're looking to start groups there in the very near future, based on the interest of the residents in the community. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, so look for us to be doing growing resilience in tough times groups and stressless groups, and offering them. So if you happen to be like an apartment community, or you have a small group of individuals that want to sort of come together and build your wellness and resiliency skills, we know it's a stressful time. We've heard that. And so we are moving in that direction. I'm going to bring Leanne into this question just one more time, but I want to pitch one more thing. So work with me, because Richelle has also been working on this. So we have all of these requests. We constantly get requests for groups and programs and support. And we fortunately now are in a place where we're looking for people who want to help us offer groups, and we want them to help us in a lot of different ways currently. And we're also a part of the Champaign Blueprints for Peace, and so we have called them our Here for You and our Support for You network. And so Richelle has also been working on that. Can you tell us a little bit about the April 2nd event?
We plan to have a virtual open house so that we can talk about the opportunities that we're going to have, some part-time opportunities to be part of our Here for You network or Support for You. And so we're putting the word out. Actually, it's going out shortly, right? Like in a day or so, to people who may have interest in getting involved. That will be on April 2nd, 10:30 to noon. Yeah, and that's a virtual. That will be we'll possibly do this more than once, but that will be our first one, our first for a little open house. What did I miss?
So first of all, I think, yeah. So I hope people hear, I don't know if it's always clear, but over time, since TRI has sort of been in existence, we have this vision around building capacity where people from the community are a part of the healing and resiliency building, right? We want to build community from the inside out. And so we believe if we can, so as Richelle mentioned, we're looking for people with mental health experience, and however you define that is however you define that. We want to train and support you. So we're not necessarily looking for therapists or people with license or whatever. We just want people who are sensitive and compassionate, who are strength-based, who are culturally responsive, and who are interested in learning. Now, if those are sort of the core variables, and you've got some time. Because the other thing is sometimes we get people who are really interested, who have all of those skills and don't have time. So we are asking for folks to have the ability to make a commitment for as small as 5 hours to as many as 20 hours a month. Not just volunteer, but we're always looking for volunteers. Some of these opportunities have compensation involved. So we hope that if you are someone who really wants to do individual or group-based support for youth, young adults, or individuals who've been impacted by gun violence, that you will see yourself coming to our virtual open house. And we'll be having a separate conversation about therapists, because we will, I don't know if people have heard, but we'll be looking to build sort of this provider network and provide some training opportunities around some trauma-specific treatments. So I'm sure I missed something, but know that there is information coming. I'm going to bring Leanne into the conversations, because we kind of went micro, and then there's the macro piece, and then we'll go back to the micro. So hi, Leanne. I don't know if people know, but Leanne Kelly is the board president for TRI, and welcome. We can't hear you. Let's hopefully. No. So we still can't hear you. Oopsies. Okay.
She's gonna come off and come back on.
Yeah, we're gonna suggest off and back on.
Back on again. It's always the fix.
Yes. So while Leanne is waiting to sort of log off and come back on, I will sort of lead you with where she's going to be going. So Leanne is on because she wants to talk about a transforming communities conversation that's happening, and I'm not going to steal her thunder, but I want to sort of set the stage about why. And I know, Richelle, you were a part of our earlier conversation around our learning collaboratives. And so why do you think, and maybe you and I can talk, why do you think we're talking about transforming communities? Let's see if she's back.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yay.
Hi. So I was just saying you were going to be on to talk about transforming communities. Can you share a little bit?
So back in 2020, Karen and I were having a conversation about using our board. And we also knew there were people out there that really wanted to get involved, but at that point in time, a lot of it had to do with survivors, and that needs skills that we didn't all have. So we've continued to discuss it. And what we thought was that we could get into, that we could offer these conversations. So transforming our community conversations that will help all of us get on the same page about what it means to be a trauma-informed, resilient community. And at the same time, kind of break it down in terms of what individuals can do, how they can help in terms of groups, even at the systemic level, ways that throughout our community, regardless of what your address is, that you could be part of the change. Is that enough of a description?
That is.
Okay.
I'm going to just sort of keep asking questions, and Richelle,
good.
you can chime in, right? So I know, a couple of shows ago, we had Marlon with H3 on talking about the H3 initiative. And I'm
Right.
hoping people see how important it is to have this comprehensive plan. I'm sure we'll have a larger conversation about the Champaign Blueprints for Peace. And then there's the campus community compact that is also being rolled out now. And what I know that you often articulate in board meetings and at city council and other places is you want people to understand that sometimes we spend a lot of time, talent, and energy looking at the symptoms and not at the root. Am I right? Or how would you, what would you like to offer in addition to sort of what I said around the framing? What do you think people get wrong with their approach to this and why we need to do things more transformative?
So I think that people often are looking at the symptoms because that's what you see, right? We see a rise in gun violence right now and a spread in where the violence is occurring. And people in some middle class and where upper class neighborhoods, which is my neighborhood too, are getting more concerned or getting more worried, right? Yet to me, the gun violence is an outgrowth or an outcome of these larger systemic problems: racism, poverty, lack of employment opportunities, education. Violence is in there, but violence, from my perspective, comes out of trauma that people have experienced. So trauma does beget trauma, right? Or begets violence. That's true. Yet, if we aren't going back to that point where how can that be disrupted? The poverty, the lack of housing, the lack of employment opportunities, the education inequities, then we're just going to be caught in a cycle. And just as trauma has been proven to be passed down in the DNA, this is a community generative thing that if we don't look at it as a whole community and engage in it as a whole community, treating the symptoms is not, it might go down a little bit. We had a dip in gun violence in Champaign in 2017. It had been rising from 2013. Then we had a dip in 2017, and then 2018 and 19 started going up again. And then, the pandemic has shot it through the roof. Why? Because all of those root causes were exacerbated by the pandemic. So better understanding how all of those root causes impact people's behavior, I think, and ways that we can then effectively address it and equip people to effectively address it will enable all of us to become a more resilient community.
I loved your articulation of that. Right. Richelle, do you want to add anything?
I don't know what I can add to that. That was so well said, Leanna.
Yeah, it's a lot of hand motions, The Italian.
Well, it takes one to know one, right? I'm always. So the thing that I want to add the thing that I want to add that Leanne articulated so beautifully is that what we know about building resilient community isn't novel. It's why Richelle who designed A Place to Stand, or many different organizations like Salt and Light, or name it, have similar values or beliefs around what is best practice, because best practice is works. And so what we found is we need a coordinated collaborative approach. We've got to have a systematic approach to addressing root causes. Things that Marlon was articulating with the H3 initiative, where there is a one-stop shop, because it's one thing for us to collaborate. Richelle was talking about A Place to Stand and sort of going to all these different partners and bringing them together under one umbrella. Imagine if you're in the same place, co-creating together, having to work together. I think I was mentioning at the PCs for People event, being there together means that we're each changing each other's responses, how we work, how we do business. And so I think, people, I'm hoping the audience is realizing how important this bridge approach is, because it's so tempting to believe that one program will solve it. I've heard people say that, like, well, we've got this program over here, and we've got this program over here, and we've got this program over here. And I think that we only work well when we all work well together. So, right, in terms of terms of, the vision and the bridge. Am I right or wrong, or what am I missing?
Totally. And, I have volunteered in a lot of, in many organizations in the last 30 years within this community. We have wonderful organizations. Yet when it's collaboration is not, let's go do an event together. True collaboration that builds community capacity is us really getting in, not into one another's spaces, but understanding your approach, my approach, influencing one another. And part of why Sherry Faulkner, who's a professor at the university, and I are going to be facilitating these conversations, the first one being March 24th at noon. And the link will be on Facebook and on our website. Is to just help people see it, help people get a better understanding of where they could fit in to this bigger picture that includes collaboration, because they could be volunteering in one of those agencies, right? And then they would have an opportunity to learn more, not only about that organization, but share kind of how TRI does things. So what we're looking for is a true exchange of information. We plan to open with a little bit about what it means to be trauma-informed and what a resilient community might look like, and then some other ideas about helping people find their place. But mainly, we want to talk so that we're more connected as a community, across the community.
I love that. And did I lose you?
No, I'm just laughing because it's nothing that you and I don't talk about with some regularity, but it's interesting to think we have to articulate it almost.
And a trauma-informed is an equitable community, which is a racially just community too. And, it all works together. So for people who see them as sort of these separate initiatives, they miss part of the puzzle, right?
Right.
So, and Richelle, I know you have this as your lived experience. It's not theoretical for you. Do you have examples? Because I know you've done this well and right. Do you have examples like, in another community where you've seen what you've been able to do and how wonderful it has been for the people that you're supporting?
Well, I was just thinking, I like what Leanne said about the fact that you really end up influencing one another, right? Because I don't think there's been a true collaboration where I don't get something from, right? Your ideas become better, the service becomes better. And in that, I also believe in the past, some of our partners, like outside eyes and voices kind of coming together, and you get to see, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe if you're within an organization, you think you've got it, right? And then someone else comes in and they're working with you and they see something differently. You get to sort of shed light, it's not necessarily critical, but maybe it is, but in a good way, right? Like sometimes you're taking a look and saying, do you realize that, we're not responding within a certain amount of time? Or did you know that this is the way we do it? And it goes in both ways. I'm not saying, but I do realize that is what happened, whether it's when we were working with Homestretch, who'd been around a long time, or with Bright Paths, these organizations that were huge. But there's something about really big organizations too, that, so we learn from them because they were able to build capacity and they're really large. So we need to get certain things from them. But at the same time, there's something nice about being just small enough where we still have that, I don't know, there's a level of, you don't lose that personal touch and the passion and the care about what you're doing. So it's a little bit of, right? It's the give and take of that is what I think it's so important. And you have to go into it with that feeling of, as Leanne said, it's not we're at this event at the same time doing this thing, because that's not collaboration.
Right.
You know, it really is sitting in that room together and figuring things out, and sometimes, you know, arguing the point and coming up with, well, what is the best way to do this? And I do think that gives us the best results. I mean, I have to say, before we started A Place to Stand, or in order to do this, we traveled to, I can't even, it was a while ago. We went down to North Carolina. We went up to places in New York State. We visited multiple residential homeless shelters. We visited places that were, you know, all holistic. We played the spectrum to figure out what's working, what isn't. We asked hundreds of questions to figure out what's working, what isn't, and what do we want this to look like. And even after all of that, and knowing that we knew it was a holistic approach that we wanted, even though we came away with what we wanted, you still can't do it alone. Like, after all of that, I think ultimately it's, and we're gonna figure out who in the community can help us make this happen. So,
Right.
Yeah. And so I can't wait, not that first of all, I should not be excited about this, but, you know, there have been a community partnership, a group of us that have been working on trying to make sure that individuals who are experiencing gun violence have housing needs met in a way that is trauma informed and culturally responsive and all of those other good things, but that is healing and resiliency and wellness. And I am so looking forward to Richelle sort of being involved meaningfully in that process, because she has so much lived experience and expertise. But you can see, like, it's how we cross pollinate and think about not just what we do, but how we do it that makes all the difference, you know, like, you know, like I feel like that's what we preach all the time. It's like not the what, because, you know, you can do well-intentioned things that cause harm.
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
One of the things that came across as Richelle was talking to me was another part of collaboration is building trust, right? And to be a resilient community, you have to have trustworthiness and transparency. And for all the right reasons, most nonprofits have kind of existed in their silos because they're all kind of going after the same funding, you know. So being able to, you know, recognize it's more important to trust one another than be worried about, oh my gosh, they're going to hear our good idea and then they'll get the money and we won't, that kind of thing. And when you were talking, Richelle, about being, you know, collaborating and seeing how somebody else does it too, I think a lot of times I have learned things. Nobody was trying to tell me you did it wrong. They were just sharing their thing and were like, I'm just, you know, the light bulb goes off. Oh, I never thought about that, you know? And so that those opportunities, you have to get together, right? To even have those opportunities. So that's
So
part of why we want to have the conversations, because then everybody's got some wisdom to share.
Absolutely. And also shared language, right? Because that's the other piece, is that I'm in multiple different spaces, and I think that first of all, like, complex problems require complex solutions, right? So anytime somebody's like, I think the solution to community violence is, I don't know, job training.
Right.
And then I want to unpack that. So, like, okay, so is it job training or just jobs? Because there's an education piece, right? Like, I can't just be trained for a job if I don't have had the right foundation to be able to show up for it. And then there's the sort of mental health and self-esteem piece. I might have organizational needs, right? Because I'm in time management needs or focusing issues, or might not believe that that job is for me because I can't see, no one in my life has ever done moved in that way, right? And so like if we're not working all together, then we're looking for really easy solutions to these really complex problems. And so I'm hoping as people listen and sort of join the transforming communities conversation, they'll continue to think more broadly and deeply about these things. And also we'll listen to think about like where alignment is or what's the missing link, because that's how these efforts work, right? Like, is that more people talk, it's generative, right? The more you talk, the more you come together, the more people are like, where's this fit? Or I have this need, right? So that's what you're hoping will grow out of this.
Yes, for sure. And I think about duplication. Because when we don't really know what one another's doing or how we can contribute, then you think of a great idea and have don't realize it's happening somewhere else. And you could go and make that better rather than starting your own. At one point in time, I felt like I was hearing of a new nonprofit at least twice a month, and then it's not easy to be a nonprofit. We know with all the financials and the taxes and everything. And so then I think people get discouraged. Whereas if we can find meaningful ways for people to plug in, and use their interests, somebody who's much more interested in policy type stuff versus people, to be able to help put them in that direction and guide them, or offer some opportunities.
Oh, yeah. Woo. And that's a hard one. I think I've shared with other people on that a symptom of a community's woundedness is when there is a lack of trustworthiness and transparency, when we spend more time like talking outside of meetings than in meetings, or that, people don't share. And so this is a Karen parenthetical, when we had the Access Initiative, right? Part of what we knew a long time ago was that there was woundedness in the helping community, and that we saw being trauma informed as important for the people doing the work as it was for people receiving the work. Because if we weren't in good places with each other, with the work and our ability to create healing, it is really hard to, right? Like, heal or promote healing and wellness and resiliency when the folks doing the work are bleeding, not well, feeling under supported, without capacity. And part of what we know from the data and literature around resilient communities is that there's an investment in the people doing the work, that we are constantly pouring in, constantly celebrating. I will say one thing. This morning we had a learning collaborative meeting, and someone who was on the meeting jumped on the call just to say how happy she was at her organization. She just couldn't stop talking about how wonderful it was, how healing it was, how she thought every day that she was going to work and making a meaningful difference. And I was like, I told her, I was like, we need to see, hear, elevate, and promote your voice. And I think in this transforming communities, things like celebrations and acknowledgement will also kind of come out in that process.
Right. Yeah.
So we've got just a few more minutes, and I don't want to sort of leave anything on the floor. Any kind of closing words, because I'll do the final plugs of all the events, but what would you like to offer as we sort of wrap up?
Well, for me, I think one of the things we haven't really touched on is the equity piece, which has really been a significant part of my personal journey in the last 7 years. And that's also a touchy thing, of, are you racist? Are you not racist? Are you anti-racist? All those things. And that's where I also hope for these conversations, that we can build trust in our virtual space so that people can say, well, I don't get this? I don't, explain to me that. So that we can all learn what historic racism, why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is hard to be in a loving community where we are siloed and not loving, right? We are not operating from a love ethic.
yet I think people want to do that, but they don't necessarily know how love looks. And part of that's cultural differences.
Oh, yeah.
So understanding those.
Yeah.
So this, we're trying to be open-ended here and let people come and, with some guidance and ground rules, talk about how do we all fit and make this a transformation of a community.
I love it. Oh.
Richelle, your turn.
Oh, well, I guess really in closing, I want to reiterate how happy I am to be here, and I look forward to learning more and getting to know more about the community, getting involved in future projects. It's going to be, I feel like good things are to come.
And so, great job. I know, we are so happy to have her. So I'm going to remind you of some events. I'll start off with the first one. So, and there'll be more information about this on our Facebook, on our listserv, and in all of the various spaces. But on April 2nd, we invite anybody who knows of somebody or is somebody who who is able to provide culturally responsive mental health support to attend our virtual open house. It's from 10:30 to noon. Again, information about that will be available. We also, on April 14th at Douglas Library from 6 to 8, want to invite individuals who want to have more information about COVID and its connection to wellness, particularly now with all of the changes. That will be at Douglas Library. And again, information will be available about that in all of our various spaces. And last but not least, oh my gosh, I should have done it first, but it probably makes sense for me to do it last. There is,
stay in their mind.
I know, there is Transforming Communities. There is a luncheon discussion this coming Thursday, March 24th from 12
to 12:50. Yeah.
So from 12 to 12:50 to 1 o'clock. On the flyer, it says come for as much of the discussion as you can. It'll be on Zoom, so you can join right at home. And it's part of a 3-part series. So, right, part 1, part 2, part 3. And I know one of the questions you're going to be asking, Leanne, is will you record it? Because people will say I can't be there. So if I can't be there for all 3, will you record it? So it will be available on demand. So we'll get back to you that. Our phone number that you can call and text is 217-931-9971 or 9989. Both of those will reach us. It has been such a pleasure sitting with 2 of the voices. We're going to have to jack Janice up because she bailed on us. She pulled a bait and switch. She was here with us, but Janice Walker is another core member of our team. So we will bring her on coming soon. Thank you for joining the Tri Show, and stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye.